everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today, and happy International Women's Day. My name is Patricia. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a white woman in my mid-30s with long blonde hair, blue eyes, and I'm wearing a black shirt with pink flowers. I'm the Alumni Engagement Officer for the Faculty of Science. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging that much of our work here at the University of Waterloo takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, which is the land granted to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is coordinated within our Office of Indigenous Relations. As was mentioned in the chat, and I'm sure some of you have noticed, your camera and microphone are defaulted to off. We do welcome your participation in this conversation in the chat box and through asking questions in the Q&A. We recommend that you change the view on your Zoom to the gallery view, which you can do by clicking on the view icon in the top right-hand corner of your window. And I think that's all I have in terms of housekeeping. So I am going to take this opportunity to pass the microphone over to Dr. Chris Hauser. He's the faculty's Dean of Science. He joined us back in July and is pleased to be here to help host this event. Chris.
Thank you, Patricia. Can I just check that you can hear and see me? I just dropped off the call by mistake here. Perfect. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everyone, and happy International Women's Day. My name is Chris Hauser, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm a white male quickly nearing 50 with brown hair and blue eyes, and I'm wearing a blue shirt and tie. I'm so happy to be here to celebrate and acknowledge the incredible contributions and inroads that women continue to make around the world, particularly in science. Science only advances through a diversity of thought, perspectives, and experiences. As you are aware, this year, the theme of International Women's Day is Inspire Inclusion, and today we have an exceptional panel of science alumni who embody this theme in its entirety. I'm excited for this event. It is going to be an insightful and lively discussion. I would like to introduce you to our host, Megan Middleton. As a lot of you probably already know, Megan already through her previous roles in the science as the Associate Director of Advancement and as Senior Development Officer. During her time with the university, Megan has led several strong advancement and engagement initiatives, resulting in a significant increase in donor and alumni retention. She is now the first Faculty of Science Director of Advancement, and I think and I can't think of a better person to lead such an important conversation. To our 4 panelists, Manushka, Sophia, Samantha, and Jen, thank you for being here with us today and for discussing your stories around inspiring inclusion. Your career and personal successes are an inspiration to us all. You're a source of pride for the Faculty of Science and for the entire University of Waterloo. And to our guests watching today, thank you once again for joining our International Women's Day event. I think we're onto something, important conversations on what matter to women and really what has to matter to all of us. It is only when we take the time to listen, discuss, and act on these discussions that we can truly make a significant and meaningful step towards equity. And at this time, I will now pass over the mic to Megan to get this discussion underway. Thank you again.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Patricia. Hi, everyone. As you've heard, and many of you know, I'm Megan Middleton. Pronouns are she, her. I am a white woman in my 40s with short blonde hair, blue eyes, and wearing what I think is a pink shirt. I'm honored to be here today. Many of you have seen me sort of behind the scenes in this event, but I'm really excited to be here as the host, and I'm really excited to be back in science as the Director of Advancement. For many of you, you already know, I'm sure this is our 5th ever International Women's Day High Tea Social. We started this during COVID when Sharon and I were trying to figure out how we can continue having the conversations and make sure that women get to celebrate International Women's Day. So we're really excited to see so many of you back again. For those of you who have not participated before, like Patricia said, use the chat and just sit back with your cup of tea and enjoy the conversation. I'm going to ask my colleague Sharon to pop on quickly because, of course, this is the day the whole team looks forward to, and every single one of us seems to have some sort of flu. So Sharon is also here just in case we need her. So Sharon.
Oh, hi, everyone. Sharon McFarland, the Communications Office here in Advancement in Science. I'm a white woman in my early 50s with brown hair that has perhaps a touch of gray, and I'm wearing a gray sweater. However, I am colorblind, so in my mind, it's green.
Thanks, Sharon. Okay, so let's get started. I've had the pleasure of chatting with each of the panelists individually and together up till today, so I know that we're going to have a really great conversation. Samantha, if you wanted to start off the introductions.
Yes, thank you so much, Megan. My name is Samantha Fowler. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with bleached blonde hair, wearing glasses and a beige blazer in front of some very brightly colored walls. I graduated from my undergrad in science with psychology and biology in 2019, and I went on to do a master's in science communication. I'm actually returning to the university to do a PhD this fall, studying role models in STEM, but I also work at the University of Waterloo as the Disability Inclusion Coordinator. I will pass it on to Sophia to introduce themselves.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Hi, I'm Sophia Drolia. My pronouns are she, they, and I am a South Asian brown-skinned, non-binary human being in the best years of my life, or some would call them the early 40s. I have short salt and pepper hair, as they call it, and dark rimmed glasses, and I'm wearing a black jacket that's really embroidered with green, pink, and blue flowers. I graduated from science and business in 2006, so it feels like a lifetime ago. And I have the privilege of leading diversity and inclusion at Interact. So if you think of your debit card or e-transfers, that's what I'm talking about, is Interact. And then I also am the chair of the board for Fast and Female, an organization that is focused on keeping young girls in sport and physical movement. I will pass it off to Jen.
Awesome. Thanks, Sophia. So my name is Jen. I identify as a queer white woman in my 40s. I use she, her pronouns. I have glasses and I'm wearing a black shirt, and I have sort of like brownie blonde, almost shoulder length hair. I did my BSc and my PhD at the University of Waterloo, both in the environmental or earth and environmental sciences department. I'm now an instructor in that department, and more recently became the associate dean for a diverse, inclusive, and safe science. I'm really super excited to be part of this conversation today and learn from all the other panelists, and I'll throw it over to Manushka to introduce herself.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everybody. I'm Manushka, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm around in my mid-20s, and I have dark hair, tan-skinned, Indo-African. I'm very excited to be here. I graduated from the University of Waterloo in 2022, very recent, from the Science and Aviation program. And I'm currently working as a safety officer for a private jet company called Charter Air Group. Really love the company, and I get to see the safety side of things. And the reason why I'm interested in this panel today was because I've realized how inclusivity kind of plays a role in safety and aviation. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. And being a pilot as well, I'm excited to bring forward, I guess, my experience being in a field which is mostly male dominated. Yeah, it's going to be a great discussion. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I will not ask my colleague Nina to come on video. Nina was hardest hit by the flu, so she is here in the background making sure that everything works, hopefully in her pajamas. So on that, I think we can get started. So why don't we start by discussing the obvious, why inspiring inclusivity is important to you and what it means to each of you. Do we have anybody that wants to kick off the conversation?
I can start. So yeah, I've been thinking a lot about inclusivity and how to sort of inspire that. And I think one thing to do is, in a way to kind of get inclusion started, is to just be really open to listening and learning about other people's life experiences. And then, you know, if I want
if I'm interested in trying to make an event inclusive, I need to sort of, stop and ask those people who have different like lived experiences, what it is that they want from that event or that situation or whatever it is that we're dealing with. A couple of years ago when I was on this panel, one thing we talked about was making room at the table for other people to participate. And one thing that I've kind of been thinking of a lot lately is, is this table even really, the important thing? Like if we're dealing with people who have physical disabilities, that physical table needs to go out the window. This table is also very colonial. So if we're dealing with Indigenous folks, then we need to completely rethink like what this table is. So I think we need to inspire inclusion by taking the time to learn and think about, the things that I might want to include people into. Maybe they don't want to be in that space. And if they don't want to be in that space, then how do we change that so they can still be part of the conversation and feel like they're valued members of our community?
I think that's such an important point to talk about, the idea of listening and learning, because the idea of inspire inclusion immediately makes me think of who is doing that inspiring and who are we looking to inspire that inclusion. And while inclusion is everyone's job and work that everyone should be devoted to, it's so important to be listening and learning from the people most impacted, from those equity deserving groups, and really to amplify those voices, those stories, and follow their lead. It's something that I'm really passionate about as the disability inclusion coordinator, this idea of storytelling and using stories as data for our inclusion work, so that we can actually know what people are saying, how they're impacted, what they want, whether they want a seat at the table, or something completely different. And that storytelling and listening is so important.
And I'd like to add, I think it's also important to truly show up as your authentic self. I think when you're leading with authenticity and with empathy, people resonate with that and they connect with that. And then they also realize, hey, it's safe to be me as well. And I think that's really important in order to inspire inclusion. And it's also simple things. And I'll give you a great example with Samantha, actually. While we were doing a run through, she said, hey, when we do our introductions, can we also do descriptions? And that simple little thing got us all to think about that. And it's not hard to do, but what we've done is impacted those that otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity or don't have the opportunity to see what we look like. And so it's simple, small acts that actually create these spaces of inclusion and then inspire us, because now we know, hey, this is important with introduction. So we're going to do it next time we're interacting in other settings. And so she's now created that domino effect of inclusion.
Mm-hmm. And just to build up on that again, I mean, you guys basically said what I was going to say, but for me, awareness of what inclusivity even is in the first place, that's also very important, which is why we have this panel today, is to discuss, make more people aware of what is part of inclusivity. Is it just people in the minority, or is it people in culture? But no, it's everybody, right? And my goal at the end of this would be more to make it almost become second nature, where like we don't have to think about making those little steps to make someone feel included in a company. And when you're having a casual conversation at work, at home, on the street, at the cashier. So yeah, that's what it means to me.
Mm-hmm. I think so often we see inclusion, accessibility, and equity work as kind of the added extra, as opposed to part of the actual work that we are doing and embedded in that actual culture. And that is so important to see, that inclusivity is part of how you do your work, not the add-on that you have to slap on at the very end.
And I think to get to that point, we have to be intentional about it. And until like every single person is intentional about inclusion, careers like mine continue to exist. So I'm okay for the next 25 years if it takes you that long to figure out inclusion. But I think at the end of the day, you just have to be really intentional, and it's looking around your environment. And if everyone looks like you and thinks like you, there's a problem there. And so all you have to do is create more spaces, bigger spaces, and invite folks with different perspectives, different lived experiences to the conversation.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think just sort of being where I am in my career, I'm much more comfortable with sort of this idea of like, hey, I'm not meant to know everything, and I can ask for help, and I can look into things, and I can take that time to really think about like what inclusion is and how to be intentional about it. And Manushka, I wonder from your perspective as sort of someone who's a little bit like more new to like the work world, do you feel that you have sort of like the power to take that time and space like in your workday?
I would say it helped a lot in the beginning to see the representation out there. And I saw there were a lot of channels. Being part of the LGBTQ plus community myself, I remember going to Pride and I saw a little booth where they had gay, or I think it was Pride, Canadian Pride Association, I think. And immediately I felt associated with that. And I was like, wow, okay, so I can actually be a bit more myself there, But in terms of like me at my workplace, it took me a little while just to get settled. But at some point when I realized how important it was and how the company itself promotes that as core values as well, that really helped me to even put more attention when I'm like talking to potential recruiters in the future, or even students that I reach out to or reach out to me. I just kind of make them aware that this field in general, I can only speak for aviation, but I'm sure it applies to a lot of fields as well. But we're trending towards becoming more inclusive about a lot of things, which is a good thing. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love what you said, Jen, too, about getting to a point in our careers, right, where we can admit that we don't know everything. Everyone, and Sophia and I spoke about this in our chat. I mean, I had heard over and over that getting to your 40s was going to be great, right? And for the longest time, I was like, why? But you're right. It's the ability now to sit here, to be ourselves, and to be perfectly okay with the fact that we don't know everything, but that it's okay and safe to ask. And it was really great chatting with Jen ahead of this because, one of the things she's really excited about, and hopefully she doesn't mind me saying this, was getting to meet other people who are in positions that are doing something similar to her so that she can learn best practices and we can build this network, right, of people that we can reach out to say, oh, I've just had this experience. Have you ever seen it? So I think for me, that's been something that's been really exciting. I don't know if anybody wants to add on that or also admit they're loving being in their 40s.
I'm looking forward to it.
Show off. I think it also kind of goes back to Sophia's point about being authentic. I think like it's taken me a long time to really be like comfortable in who I am and to be that person like outwardly. And I think age helps with that. And also realizing that you are really part of a supportive network. And I think sometimes it takes a while to kind of feel that maybe when you're a little bit younger. And I grew up my training as a geologist, and I spent many summers out in the field as the only female in bush camps, and spent a lot of time trying to keep up with the boys, so to speak. And I wish I'd just kind of like settled into myself, and sure, I can also lift that 75-pound motor, but I've got other skills that I can use in this camp that are going to be just as important as being able to keep up with the guys. I spent a lot of time trying to fit that mold and not be kind of the odd one out in the camp. And now, yeah, when I think about all the energy I spent doing that, was a lot. It's nice not to have to do that anymore.
And conformity comes at a huge cost, right? There's such like on like a strain on your psyche, and if you can't be your authentic self in your work environments, in your families, just within your environments, you are constantly like burdened with so much weight that you can't take in all the experiences around you. So you're never going to be operating at your best self if you can't be your best self, right? So there's something really to be said about authenticity and how important it is, and to be able to live our lives authentically.
And if I can build up on that, I'm in safety in aviation, okay? And a big part of aviation falls on human factors. And building off on what Jen and you said as well, by us not being able to be our authentic self, especially in the cockpit, I can speak for pilots, we are kind of creating that gap of communication between the first officer and the captain, right? And already right there, we're inducing some instabilities in the cockpit, and that promotes a little bit more of like risks getting higher in the sense. So it's just an example of how being your authentic self and having that work environment that allows you to be that authentic self is a big part of being safe. Yeah.
And I think with everyone talking about the joy of their 40s and their 50s, I'm just being really aware of my privilege of being surrounded by people who are their authentic selves. Because I, like, going through my undergrad at Waterloo, I was surrounded by mentors who were their authentic selves. And it really, ended up switching careers. I chose different plans and different paths because I started to explore who I am as a person and what I really want to do and what I love. And a big part of that was the women around me and the people around me being those amazing mentors.
Yeah, and that was a theme that came up, it's probably a perfect segue. Thank you. Another theme that came up in all of these conversations, right, is the importance of having mentors, of being a mentor. I think with someone, you even talked about how there's been a shift in what mentoring looks like, right? And creating that, one of you mentioned, having a personal, basically, board of directors that you can go to and, talk to about all sorts of different scenarios. And so I wonder if anyone wants to dig into that a little bit.
I can start a bit because aviation is big on mentors and having that support system. But yeah, I can speak for women in aviation. There are already so many channels that started off. Because if we look back in the 90s, we had one, maybe or two Canadian women in total who were pilots. And now we're up to, I think it's 10,000 around that number. So it's a huge increase, right? And we love that representation in all the different airlines or even the North as well. But with that, all that 10,000 still falls in 7%. So we're still small in comparison to the other genders, right? Because of this, there was a lot of channels. We have different groups, organizations that support women in aviation. And the support is very tangible. I legitimately feel like they are sort of like a sisterhood that's created, and it doesn't matter your background, where you come from, but it's generally just supporting women in STEM fields in general. It's not with pilots, but engineers and everyone. So we have the channels, but it's up to us to use it because the support is out there. Yeah.
Having that diversity of mentors is so important. As Megan mentioned, I'm the one who brought up this idea of a board of mentors or a board of directors for your own person. This was actually something that a mentor recommended to me, to have a group of people who you can go to about various issues, personal, professional, for guidance, for input, for diverse viewpoints. And some people in my life, I'm very open and honest with them of, you are so cool, so amazing. Will you be on my board of mentors? And I'm honest about this. Some people they are still remarkably cool, but I'm not as explicit about, will you be on my little intangible board of mentors? But it's this amazing idea of, and this amazing way of getting all these different thoughts and opinions and feeling like you have a community supporting you as an individual moving forward, which is something that you were mentioning, Manushka, this idea of the sisterhood and community, and really having that supporting you.
I also think there's so much power and privilege in being a mentor, and the impact you make on people's lives, because you're of service to them, essentially. And that's huge, right? For someone to be able to sit with you and your time, I think is immense, and what you're able to give them from your own experiences. And I think, like, it's so important, if you have opportunities to mentor, or if folks are reaching out, to just say yes, because it just might be 10 minutes of your day, but that 10 minutes can make such a drastic impact on their lives. And then again, that domino effect, right? So I think mentorship, I think, is so important. And I think sometimes we really take it for granted. Because I think some people really look for frameworks, like, oh, I don't know what to say, or what's a formal mentorship relationship look like? And it can be very formal. There are very formalized ways to create mentorship programs, but there are, like Samantha, you have your, board of mentors. I love that idea, right? Just people you want to bounce ideas off, but these are the key people with different perspectives. I think that's amazing. And so to have a mentor too, I think, as a mentee, it's also so important important to always go in recognizing that this person is giving of themselves to you at that time. So it's really important to go in prepared, at least. And like, there might not be a framework, but think about, what do you want out of this relationship? You're both going in terms of what do you both want from that relationship. But as a mentee, I think it's really key as well to remember that they're giving of themselves to you. So what do you want to receive? And then how will you then give to others?
Yeah, that's a good point, especially like this idea of like informal mentoring. And I think, I'm really lucky as like an instructor and lecturer that, there's informal mentoring that's involved in teaching university students. And, not only does the mentee get a lot out of it, but just, as a mentor, it's just really fun to see students sort of grow from, first year to fourth year. And then, some of them will stick around for grad school, or we'll go to alumni events and meet them after they've been in their career for a few years. And, I think it's kind of a win-win on both sides to be, a mentor or a mentee. And I actually find, probably for me, it's been more through like informal mentoring that I've learned, but also been able to mentor people. And I kind of agree, you can kind of get caught up in like frameworks and formal mentorship programs, which is great, but it kind of makes it seem like it's more work, actually just having conversations with people and asking them like how things are going in their lives and in their work lives, and what they're kind of thinking about doing, and, what's the next step. Those are just really genuine conversations you can have with people, and, don't need to have like a ton of structure around that.
Mhm.
And I wanted to add, it doesn't, your mentor doesn't have to be older than you. Because there's also the concept of reverse mentoring, right? And I think that's huge. Like Gen Z, I don't understand a word they say. And so I'd like to hang out with some Gen Zs and sort of understand, what is this future looking like? But it is critical, right? Because it doesn't mean, like, I think it's important for us to not look at age and then determine, yes, I want this person to be my mentor, because you can learn so much from those just coming out of school, just entering school, because you're looking at experiences versus age.
And that goes back to that idea of the benefits of mentoring. Because whenever someone reaches out to me to say, hey, can we have a quick conversation about this? I'm like, ooh, I bet you have some really cool thoughts as well. So that's just something that I get out of the relationship as well. And I hope the people who mentor me get out of that as well.
Yeah. And it's something I wish, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but it's also something I wish I understood earlier, right? I don't know if it was just how I was raised or if it was my personality, but I was always hesitant to ask, for mentorship or for any kind of help, because I didn't feel like I was offering anything in return. Because you're so right, Sophia, that, they are giving of themselves, but I didn't want to feel like I was just taking from someone. And now that I'm in this position where I do get to talk to people in their 20s and 30s, and I also don't understand a lot of what they're saying, I'm learning so much, right? And they are the future, and they are changing how the world works. So that's my moment here of, there's so much to be for everyone to learn, right, from these relationships. So we actually have we have a couple of questions, so maybe we could take a quick break from our scheduled discussion. I don't know if anyone knows the answer to this. I, full disclosure, do not. So it says, pardon my ignorance. I'm interested in understanding the rationale for the addition of describing physical appearance, presumably for people who cannot see but have had sight previously. Otherwise, what context would they have for color? Would texture be more appropriate?
That's a really great point, and maybe it's something that we can continually learn about, how we are giving our self-descriptions. From the conversations I've had in the past events that I've run, the real benefit of giving those self-descriptions is to kind of give a bit of identity and voice, or identity and context to the voice that you are hearing, because everyone will choose to do their self-descriptions a little differently depending on what they are, kind of how they want to be represented in your mind's eye. So those with low vision or vision loss, they can kind of focus on different aspects. So I mentioned that I have brightly colored walls behind me, mostly because I just painted them on Wednesday and I'm really proud of them. I like the fact that I have bleached blonde hair because that's something new about my personality and something that I'm kind of enjoying that vibe. So it is definitely something to make our events more inclusive and accessible. But yes, we can always continue learning. Maybe texture is more important than specific colors. And that might be a great question to have with the audience members to see what we can actually learn and how we can improve.
Thanks, Samantha. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? No? Okay, we have another question. Could you define what it means to be your authentic self? And also, a board of directors for yourself is a great idea and something that we could discuss in more and more detail. But does anyone want to have a go at defining?
Yeah, I'm happy to start because I think I put that in there initially. I think authenticity is essentially a good example is if you feel like something is wrong, you say it. You just say it, like in a board setting, in a team meeting, you speak up. But you also determine for yourself what's safe. Is it safe for you to speak up in that public setting, or is it just a one-to-one setting? It's also showing up in, like, for example, my hair is a part of my identity, and it's been short for a long time, but also in my 40s, I have still kept this amazing hair. But it's also, I blow dry it, I take my time, but it's part of my just showing up as my authentic being. And also there are times where I do feel quite intimidated, or I feel like I don't belong when I walk into a room, because there is almost in every instance I walk into a room, there isn't someone else who looks like me. But what I've done is created spaces for those that do look like me to walk in that room, because I've created this space where you become comfortable with someone who looks like me. And so I think that's just what it is. And then, I insert my humor here. Like if I wanted to if I wanted to conform, then it would really just stick to the questions and answers. But instead, I'm inserting pieces of myself, so you get to know who I am in this little video. But that way, you get to see and resonate with me versus just a very scripted person. I hope that helps.
Oh, can I tell you how much I just love that answer? That's even the part about humor, right? Because I think that it is bringing yourself, right? And when you agree and when you don't agree, and when you think you could just lighten the mood a little bit by being funny, which I always think I am. So like I love that answer. Thanks for that.
It's also when acknowledging if you're having a bad day, right? You can just authentically say, like, I'm having a really bad day, so I might not be my best self today. That also allows the person who's receiving that information understand where you're at, and then maybe give you some grace as well, right? So I think that's really key in showing up as yourself.
Sophia, you're saying this, but the thing about admitting like you're tired today and stuff like that, and I'm new to like the workplace, and I could admit that's a real thing. I didn't used to do that in the beginning, but once I started saying, I'm just kind of having like a low day today, my rest of it ended up being better. Weirdly, so like it kind of worked out for me, yeah. So that's definitely like being authentic for sure is or just being yourself, honestly, helps a lot. It helps the people around you. You work better, better relationships just start off right away. So yeah.
As I'm leaning into this identity for myself as someone who is neurodivergent, this idea of masking and being versus being my authentic self is something that becomes more and more relevant to me, of realizing, what do I do because I'm ashamed, because I want to conform, because I want to meet other people's standards, and what do I actually, how much eye contact do I like to give? How much do I like to talk? How intense? Because I'm intense, I'm passionate, and that's something I often try to mute around other people. And so that was a huge thing for me, and that was a big part of going back to that community and mentoring, was finding neurodivergent mentors who talked about what it means to unmask and be your authentic self. And that was huge for me in realizing how I want to interact with people and what it means to be that authentic self, which I'm still exploring.
Yeah, I think I really enjoy everyone's comments so far, and I think one thing that really kind of resonates with me when it comes to being your authentic self is something that Sophia said about having sort of that safer space to to be able to do that. And, depending on sort of the room I'm in, sometimes I'm going to change the language that I use and how I communicate with people. And those are sort of like related to different levels of me being able to be authentic. And, I might answer if someone's like, how was your weekend? Depending on who's in that room, sometimes I'm going to say, well, me and my partner did this. Or if other people are in the room, then I'm going to say like, me and my girlfriend did this. And so for me, being authentic is being like having that comfort to be able to communicate. And it changes depending on who's in the room. And it would be, great if we all lived in really safe space. But what's safe for me isn't safe for someone else. Just trying to be as comfortable as you can and how you communicate with people, to me has a lot to do with sort of that being an authentic self. And I do think that, it's kind of talking about, having a bad day or whatever. I do think that's a great thing to be able to say to people, because I think the more we kind of understand each other and the more empathetic we are, I think just the better everyone's day is going to go. And maybe that means you get to have like a little bit of maybe your boss is going to give you a little bit of a timeout if they know you're having a bad day. And then you're going to be able to kind of be like, okay, now I'm ready. And, I think it's just going to make us all just like more, I want to say more efficient, but just like doing a better job with our lives. If we
Well, it's because we want to, because we're fully seen and valued as who we are. And I think the key to all of that is psychological safety, right? Like going back to that feeling of safety. If I don't have to mask, then I have more room in my brain to think about what do I want to do and how do I want to participate, because you want to be fully there. And that's the key too, right? In organizations, if they don't recognize the value of inclusion and psychological safety, they're losing out on so much like of this untapped potential, because you like there's layers and layers and layers that you're just missing out on. And so I think it's really key. And I had shared this, and I'm huge with storytelling. When I was in London, England, back in May, I usually, when I'm wearing blazers, I always have a pride pin on me. It's like that's part of my identity. And then when I was in London, I had it because I was at a D&I conference, felt really comfortable. But I got back to the hotel room, I was going into the tube, I actually took it off. And because I didn't feel safe. And so then in that whole experience of being in the tube, I was just navigating who are these people? How are they receiving me? How are they looking at me? I was walking into a neighborhood to go visit someone. Same thing. I wasn't actually taking in wow, look at these beautiful houses. Look at just the atmosphere around me. All I was thinking about is who is looking at me and what are they thinking about me? And so it's the same thing in a workplace. If you're all constantly having to mask parts of your identity, you're not going to be participating fully, and you won't get the full experience, but then your employer doesn't get that full experience out of you as well. So, I mean, the benefit really is to create these psychologically safe environments for all of us to thrive.
Yeah, and safety, it's actually, again, a perfect segue, because this was something that came up. One of the conversations Sophie and I had when we were talking about inclusion was even just the different perspective and the different experiences that we all bring to inclusion, right? And so how we see it and how we live it and how we're trying to create it. And when safety was something that came up, and I had an experience a couple of weeks ago with a male colleague who he startled me, right? He hadn't done anything wrong, but he startled me, and I jumped, and he made this comment of being jumpy. And it was this first moment where I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm a woman, right? Because if I'm not expecting someone to be right behind me, and then someone is right behind me, my first instinct is flight, right? It's not like, oh, hey, who is it? And so that's the lens that I bring when we think about safety. But then chatting with Manushka, right? She had a totally different way in which safety intersects. And so now I won't steal her thunder, because this was, I know, something she wanted to talk about.
Yes, I'm passionate about this. So like I mentioned earlier, aviation is big on safety, right? And there is a training that we do. It's called crew resource management. And at the moment, not a lot of airlines include inclusivity as being a main topic of conversation to pilots or even flight attendants to talk about. And that would mean being more careful about what you're saying or how you're saying things. Who are you saying it to? And paying attention to pronouns and stuff like this. Or even just saying right away, okay, hey, I am an ally, or I've gone to this, and all these little things play a big role in aviation. And I think it's American Airlines who have implemented having inclusivity as part of their subject during training, and which is good. They're seeing improvements. People love working there. I've seen a lot more hires, or even students who asking about those airlines specifically. But yes, I think we've improved a lot. I think all fields have, but there's room for improvement. There's always improvement, right? So yeah. And Sophia, you mentioned psychological safety. That is a big word in aviation. It's been a topic of conversation. I went to a conference a year ago, and those two words did come up. So it's being talking about with directors of all airlines. So I can say for aviation, at least, there is movement towards it. So yeah, and I'm proud to say that, actually.
I think that idea of there's room for improvement is such an important part, because yes, there's amazing things happening, but there's also so much room for innovation and creativity with our inclusion. Because when we talk about safety, I immediately think of safety of disabled people and disabled students in labs and field work, and how we're being accessible and inclusive in those spaces, and how a lot of times things like service dogs are said, oh, they're not safe in labs, as opposed to being innovative, creative, and looking at the problem and saying, okay, how can we actually get the service dog and the handler safely into the lab so that they can do and be included and belong and do really cool science. And I think that's so important, this idea of innovation, creativity, and constantly looking for ways to improve both safety and inclusivity.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what Jen was saying, right? For many of us, when we started talking about, being inclusive, it was making space at the table, but maybe the table is just the wrong analogy now, right? Like it is iterative, and it's making sure that, yeah, we are innovating and we are changing and we're considering all of the different angles. So I think that's a really great point. We have another question that I think the group will enjoy in our 14 minutes. How can we foster more women groups in work and support situations and really rally for each other? I think this is something a lot of us wonder about, right? How can we do this at work?
You just do. You start it. You start a Teams chat. You invite all the women, and then you get your executives to say, all right, we have an ERG. Give us some money. Okay, it's not that easy. But I mean, it's small steps, right? Like that's what it is. It can be as simple as you start. I mean, depending on what platform you use, but if you have a messaging platform in your workplaces, you start inviting those that identify as women. But you also, I think it's key, work with your D&I folks at work as well, and tell them that this is what that you want to do, and they'll help guide you as well. Like that's what we do here. When someone wants to create an ERG, it's very employee-led, employee-centered. So we empower them to do it. And so I think it's as simple as, yeah, just start it, ask another person. You'd be surprised how many people actually put their hands up to do it. And then work with your executives. You'd be surprised. Oftentimes, actually more than not, they say yes. I think it's the fear we have of asking for it. But when we do, it's in fact, you'll probably receive a yes more than, 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, and I think sort of talking about this, like kind of how do you build community and things like that. One take-home message I got from UW's IWD event this morning, one of our alumnus, Jennifer Lee, was talking about some sort of like strategies, and she said you should talk about people when they're not in the room. And it's like supporting people and trying to connect people and kind of be that person, say like, hey, I think the thing that you're doing kind of sounds like this, or maybe you would benefit or would be interested in talking to that person. So yeah, try to connect people. And she mentioned that that's what she tries to do at the end of each meeting, is to like connect people to other people and just build up that community. And really, I think it's kind of like a bit of a grassroots approach, which I think is the best way to go about everything, is just to connect people and let that community kind of build up itself. And if you give it the time, and if you give it a little bit of intention by trying to connect people, it's going to grow organically.
I think one the powerful movements of like or the powerful parts of grassroots movements is that there's so much listening and learning, going back to an earlier point you said, Jen, of constantly iteratively growing and changing and to meet the needs of the community, because it's the community that is leading that effort.
Yeah, thank you. So in the chat, Bertina says, what do you say if someone says something that is rude or targeting someone during a meeting? Sometimes one can be caught off guard and too shocked to respond in the moment. I'm sure we've all sat in a meeting where you think, did that just happen?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I think there's two ways, right? There's calling in and then there's calling out. And I think you have to determine for yourself in that situation, what do you want to do? So calling out is actually just calling someone out in that spot right there in front of everyone. And that might not be the best approach, depending on where it is, how it is. Like if it's in public and someone's being attacked, yeah, maybe you want to get involved and stop that person, right? That's calling out. Calling in is actually just, if someone has made that rude remark, it's, after that meeting's over, shortly after, you connect with that person and say, hey, can we talk about something? Like I'm not feeling good about something that came up, or something that was said during the meeting. Can you help me understand where this was coming from? And then go through that conversation, and then you can say, this is how it landed for me. Or, bring it back to how it made you feel. But I think it's really important to back to what Jen was saying, the connection piece, right? So you connect back with that human being and talk to them about how it landed and how it made you feel. But I think calling in has a lot of power, because it allows that person to not get defensive in a public space, and then take it in and just sit with it and figure it out. And the key is not to go in attacking. It's really important to really just talk about the eyes, like, this is how I see it, and help me understand and frame it in that way, versus you said this and you did this and you did that. You can get a very different response. So it's really key to, when you're calling in, let's talk about it, but talk about how it landed for you.
And I can add to that, because I used to be afraid to speak up for myself. One, because of my background, and I was new to Canada. I was just scared that people wouldn't like me, or they would think that, oh, what is she saying, But now looking back, I think I would say, knowing that you voicing out your opinion or your feelings about a situation doesn't mean that they will associate you as a bad person immediately, right? On the other hand, you could earn respect because you're voicing out other people in minorities' opinions, feelings, thoughts. So yeah, I think that's something that you could keep at the back of your mind in those situations, that by saying no or by voicing out your opinion, you're also voicing out the opinions of perhaps 100 people behind you, right? That kind of gave me the courage to say to speak my feelings sometimes. But yeah, it's just a little piece of advice there.
That's a great point. And I do really like this idea of calling in people and not always calling out, because that doesn't always land well. But I think another part of that is also making sure you're having that conversation with the person who was targeted during that meeting, and making sure that, they're supported, and also just for them to know that something was said to the person who made that comment, and maybe just kind of be like, I just want you to know I had a conversation with person X after, because what they said to you, was completely not appropriate, and and then kind of say, like, if this happens again, like, my door is always open, and kind of give them a path forward to make sure that they're feeling supported after what just happened. But also, if this is something that's maybe happening to them in their daily lives at work with this one person, then, maybe that's when you need to kind of treat it in a little bit more of a, a serious manner. So I think always making sure that person is supported is super important as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So recognizing that we're down to 7 minutes, because these conversations always go so quickly, which is great. One of the things that we all talked about was either something that you wish you had known earlier, or advice that you would give your younger self. Who wants to go?
I can go. I am a person who plans a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. So I have all these different plans, but I really did not expect to have to need them or have to use my plan J. Like, how did I get that far? Why did I need the plan J? And that is definitely something that I wish I had known earlier, is just this idea of it's okay to change your path. It's okay to respond to what you're hearing and what you're learning about, and take in new information about yourself, about the world around you, and change where you're going and use that plan Z or Z.73 or something. That's something that I didn't end up where I thought I was going to end up. But I am so excited to be here. And I often talk about it as kind of like I sidestepped my way here but I'm so passionate and so confident in each of those steps that I took.
Yeah, thank you. I confess, I went home and told my human that night. I was like, I was talking to this woman, and she had this great way of talking about, not needing plan C or D or Z, and how I think many of us, right? Yeah, when we're younger, you've got this linear path that you think you're supposed to follow. And then I don't know about the rest of you, but when I look back, yeah, I'm not even sure I could say it was side steps, right? Mine's like some giant zigzag where the rat was never going to get out of the maze if you had to draw like my life's journey.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Jen.
I think just kind of picking up on that is like, yeah, whatever you thought your path was going to be, it's going to change from that. And I would just say also that sometimes taking like sometimes the scariest option, or sort of that thing that you're kind of like, oh, that sounds really cool, but I don't know if I can do it. And, when you're having sort of that, almost the highest amount of self-doubt, that could be the thing that you should do. Like, I think you need to jump off the cliff every once in a while, like personally and professionally. And that's where I found like the best rewards have been. And it is a little bit scary, but I think just jumping before you look sometimes is the thing to do, because as planned as we like to all be, things are never going to go that way. So, just take that opportunity that you didn't think was going to come, and the stuff that scares you the most, sometimes those are the ones to go for.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
no, that was it. So true. And then I was going to say, yeah, you have something.
Yeah, I mean, I want to share advice I actually got as my younger self that has still remained with me. And it's so simple. And it's that change. The only thing constant in life is change. Like that one phrase has been so persistent in my life. And I think it really let me just stay open to change. And I think what's really important, and actually our speaker this morning talked about change and how when you're in the change, like think about it, it's already happened. So there's no point of complaining about it. It's now like, what are you going to do with that change? And how do you embrace that change? I think that was really key for me today. It's like, so, my whole life I've learned, yes, like the life is full of change, but today she was like, but the change has happened. Like you woke up today, a different person. You already woke up older and it's already happened. So what are you doing with that? I think that was, for me, was like so powerful. It was just like, oh yeah, the change has happened. And what am I going to do with this now? And so in every aspect of your life, if you're going through major change at work or whatnot, like, it's happening or it's happened. And now it's like, how do you embrace it? How do you show up with this new change model? And how do you be your best self in it? I think that's key. And that I think can translate at any point in your life.
And I think for me, I come from a culture where failures are not really talked about. And I did experience a few, during university, flight training, etc. But looking back now, I wish I could tell myself that it's okay that I missed a step here. It's okay that I fall back a little bit. But then my dad told me, actually, he's like, sometimes you need to go back in order to make a bigger step forward. And that's an advice that I want to tell everyone else, and even my younger self, is that you will have your own pathway, like Samantha, Jen, Sophia, even Megan, you said that the same thing as well. But it's important to also remember that at the end of the day, when you reach where you want, is to be that support system for someone else who maybe needs it. Maybe just needs to hear that, oh, I failed, so it's okay that you fail. I mean, someone else failed as well. So yeah, that's kind of what my advice would be.
Thank you. I think for me, it would either be some variation of don't be afraid to be afraid, which is what, I think Jen was saying, because it's not a feeling that many of us like. And I, will go well out of my way to avoid it when I shouldn't. And for me, it was also, not to benchmark, right? Well, everyone else my age is here, right? Or everyone else I know is doing this. And that lesson took me a really long time to learn, that we all have our own path and we all have our own journey, and we can all be the same age with very different, I have I know we're almost at time, but when we turned 40, my group of friends, somebody had an 18-year-old, somebody had an infant, and I had a cat, right? And it was like, and this is it, and it's fine, right? That was all the different ways in which we could be 40. So I know we're out of time. I want to thank all of you for coming today and for listening and participating. To the panelists, I mean, you're even more amazing than I thought. So thank you for being open and vulnerable and really sharing your authentic selves today in front of 100 people that you don't know and can't see. So thank you, Patricia and Sharon and Nina. I really appreciate you all. I hope you can get into your pajamas and house coats soon and rest up. And if there's anything else that anybody wants to say, and then we can wrap up.
I just wanted to say, if anyone wants to connect on LinkedIn, please find me, find us. I'm volunteering everyone else. But no, seriously, if anyone wants to talk further, I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn.
I can,
Likewise.
yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Now enjoy the rest of your International Women's Day and have a great weekend.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.